Hi, I'm Ian Salmon. I'm a playwright. I grew up in Bootle originally. So I lived in Bootle till I was 7. And then we moved to Fazakerley. I lived in Fazakerley until I was 25, something like that. The weird thing about growing up North End for me was I'd never felt playwriting was for the North End. Playwriting felt like something that Egbert did and Sefton Park did, and it felt a very South Liverpool sort of thing, which is a ridiculous, stupid way to think. I basically had a long career with HMV, selling records until the world decided they didn't like record CDs and DVDs anymore. And as soon as you could see that the writing was on the wall for the company and the writing was on the wall for my shop, I decided it was time to reinvent myself, and I was about to turn 50, so I started a daily blog just to get the writing muscle going on. Sat down on the 1st of January, said I'm going to blog every day for a year. Blog every day until I turned 50 in October. And then press post and realised I had to do it from that point on. And within a couple of days, I was picked up by Sabotage Times, which was the guy who used to run Loaded magazine. It was his website, so I started writing football stuff for them. And I joined a writing group around about the same time. They said they were doing a theatre competition. I thought, well, I don't know how to write plays. And they said that they would take monologues, and you can probably tell by the speed I talk at, that I can write a monologue, 45 pages of one character talking. Yeah, sounded great with that. So I entered it, and it was accepted. And they said the one condition is, it was the Page Stage Festival, the one condition was you had to produce yourself. I'm like, well, what's a producer do? And the explanation was, you make things happen. I'm like, sound of being a manager for like 20 years. I can make things happen dead easy. But the thing is, once you get in a room with actors, you realise that's what you want to do for the rest of your life, or certainly I did. And that's the point where I accidentally became a playwright. The first play was Venus Rising, which we did again a couple of years ago. I've had 3 stagings of that so far. Basically, it's about a bloke who wants to be the great American writer, despite coming from Crosby. He wants to write important stuff, but it's just in that post-50 Shades era where 50 Shades of Grey was still a massive deal. So he ends up writing erotic literature, which he hates doing. He wrote it for a joke, and he gets caught in this joke that he thought he was doing, and he becomes massively successful, but hates how successful he is, hates that he's successful for the wrong thing. He's drinking too much, he's driving his wife away. Basically about somebody who was trapped in a job that they didn't like doing. Idea first. So usually an overarching idea of what I want it to be about, and then generally build the characters from there. So as soon as you've got the idea, the story is usually partially formed. With Girls Don't Play Guitars, I was approached by a mate who'd done a bit of research on it. I said, do you fancy writing a play about this? A friend made a documentary about something. He said, do you fancy writing a musical about this? At the moment, it's people approaching me with ideas they want to do. There's a show that I'm talking about with the theatre at the moment that came from literally waking up one morning with the title. It was a play I said I'd never write, but I had the title. And as soon as I had the title, I had to write it. My mate, Paul Fitzgerald, who's a local music journalist, gig promoter, bar owner, he's been in bands. He saw this photo on Facebook, and it was these 4 girls on the Mersey ferry sitting holding guitars. And it said underneath it, the Liver Birds. And he looked and went, who are these and why have I never heard of them? So he did a bit of research. He found that Mary Dostal, the bassist, Mary McGlory as was, had married a publisher called Frank Dostal. He tracked down Frank Dostal in Germany. Had no idea how big Frank Dostal was as a music publisher at the time. Phoned him and asked if he could do an interview. Did an interview with Mary, published an article in getintothis.co.uk, which went down well. People started saying, yo, that should be a film. And I put my hand up and went, I'll write it. And he went out for a drink one night in town. He bumped into Andrew Schofield, suitably, because obviously we're in a room where Drew's done a lot of work. And he said, I've got this story and I think it needs to be a book. And Drew went, it's not a book, that's a play. And Fitzy went, I don't know how to write plays, but I know a lad who does. So he asked me if I fancied doing it. And it's the greatest rock and roll story never told. And as soon as we were into it, it's a case of, I felt an obligation to tell the story to as many people as you could possibly tell it to. Those 2 weeks that we did at the Unity in 2017, I think it was. Basically, it's about the 2 weeks before Hillsborough. The point of the story was at the end of it. And the one overarching event for my generation that delineates a definitive before and after point in Liverpool is Hillsborough, because everybody of my age knows somebody who was affected by it. And I wasn't directly affected by it. Both my brothers were in the Leppings Lane, but they were in the side pen, so they're okay. My father was in the main stand with my uncles. watching what was going on. So I wanted to write a story about, that had Hillsborough at the end, but wasn't part of it because I didn't feel right to tell my brother's story. I didn't feel right to tell the survivor story. I didn't feel right to tell the victim story. And I didn't want to be about the event. I wanted to be about what life was like the last time it was normal. Because after the 15th of April, 1989, life is never normal for any of us again. A friend I grew up with, I've known for years, she lost her brother. So you know there's an obligation to make sure that this is tonally right for the families, for the survivors, for the people who went through the day. But what I wanted to do was tell a version of our family story. So the most honest thing I could do was talk about how we were at the day. And I also knew that at the end of the play, I was going to finish at midnight on the Friday night, and I was going to send them away to the match on the Saturday. But I had to make sure you knew that they came back. The great thing about theatre is you write this stuff down in the seclusion of your room, and suddenly you've got an actor doing more with it than you ever thought you were going to do. They make things sound better than you ever thought they were going to sound. So even when you're reading it back to yourself, it just sounds like you're reading, obviously. But once an actor gets hold of it, they do something, and an actor starts asking you weird questions like, well, you've got this character and this character. Why did they stay together after university? I'm like, well, I have no idea. It doesn't matter because that was there, and it starts there and ends there, and that's all. That's the only bit I've got. So I had to start making up backstories for them, because obviously actors love backstories. But as soon as you see an actor make your words come to life, it's huge. You can start at any time in your life. You're never too old to start. I've proved that you're never too old to start writing this stuff. Put in the work, have the energy, and if you have to get things on yourself, get things on yourself. I did that with my first 4 or 5 plays, self-produced, just hired a room, got actors, did a profit share. I know a lot of people don't like profit share, but sometimes the only way you can get something on is profit share, by making sure you're not taking a penny more than any of the actors are taking for the show. From my side of things, the words aren't sacrosanct. They're not sacred. If somebody's got a better way of delivering a line, then you'll use that, because you'll find if you're writing comedy, the best laugh of the night will come from something that you haven't written. Don't compromise, because if you do, you'll be the person who compromises forever. But collaboration isn't compromise. Sometimes accept the fact that somebody else will have a really good idea of how to do something and go with it. Coming soon at the Royal Court, Liverpool, the Derby Days, a big Scouse comedy about mixed marriage, a red and a blue, and their daughter who's got a secret.